Hello everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV Uncensored Match Build-up Showtime. Chris, hi.
Paul,
how are you?
Hi. Good. You?
Feeling better?
Yeah. You?
I'm feeling better.
Good. Let's get on with it.
We are getting on with it.
Oh.
This is it.
Okay.
This is here. This is what we do.
Are we talking about football yet?
We will do. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
You're not though.
Just want to talk about football, Paul.
Talk about football then.
Bournemouth at the weekend, mate. You excited?
I'm dead excited.
Is it the biggest game of the season so far?
It's definitely not the biggest game.
Is
It's
it
the biggest game of the weekend.
Oh, for whom?
For Liverpool.
Then brilliant. I'm really excited by it because the biggest game of the weekend for Liverpool is the most important game of the weekend for me.
Actually, is it the biggest game of the weekend for Liverpool, or is Man City versus Chelsea the biggest game
Nah,
for
Liverpool.
Liverpool?
Yeah. Always is.
Yeah.
Got to win our own game first.
True. Does that inform how important our game is, though, given that if there's points going to be dropped by our nearest rivals, as it were, does that add a little extra spice to this game?
No, not really, not for me now. I think, it's nice to be able to capitalise on things and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, to take the Premier League manager, you've got to take it one game at a time, haven't you? It's far too early on in the season to be getting, well, you know what, if we lose points, are we out of the title race? No. So vice versa, it's nice to get points on them, of course it is.
Yeah, I think for me, sort of that, I guess it's we could afford to drop points the other week to some extent, and I think these are one of those situations where this is where league titles are going to be won to some extent, is that when you get an opportunity presented to you, John, that we need to go and just need to get back to getting. Be nice to have comfortable 3 points on the table, but ultimately we're entering into this period of the season now, December, January, when it gets really, really tough. It's going to get tougher than this, so we need to continue doing what we normally do to Bournemouth. We need to just go and beat them.
Yeah, we do. I mean, they're a good side, and they've been up and down a bit, but they've generally been in decent form, and they've kind of really settled into being in the Prem, haven't they, over the last 18 months. So it could be a tricky fixture, but if you're gonna have a go at having a title challenge, this is where you need to be picking up points, and historically it's actually the opposite. We've always beat the big teams and then never beat the little teams, and really, they've got a few of our ex-players there who might have something to prove against us since they've left. I know I've not set the world alight, so it's one of those where you could potentially be a banana skin, but hopefully I'd imagine we've got enough to come through.
I'm really hoping that Brad Smith and Jordan Ibe do not look to fulfil their potential at this game of the weekend. So.
Yeah, I know it's got one of those that they'll both start the game and have absolutely worldies, and then the press will pick up on it and be like, why did Liverpool let him go? But no, I think I've shown why we kind of let him go, in that we've got such a good forward line. Now you're looking at it and it's a bit light, but Woodburn came in last night and shows you that maybe he's not a complete player, but there's those flashes which I didn't show enough of.
Yeah.
And so I just think that we should have enough, even with our injuries, to go and beat Bournemouth. And something that may play into our hands is the fact that they play football, and I doubt they'll park the bus.
Yeah.
So I think it should be an entertaining match.
Completely agree with that. Let's have a trivia question, shall we?
Go ahead.
Yes. 4 players in the Premier League era have played for both Bournemouth and Liverpool. I want you to name them in the comments below. We'll reveal the answers a little bit later on in the show, but have a little think about that as well, gents, and I will be getting your answers as well later on. Chris, will there be any issues of fatigue? Tuesday to Sunday is a pretty decent gap.
Yeah, I'd like to hope not. Obviously, I think accumulated fatigue maybe, because we only played Saturday to Tuesday, and there was 2 players in Jon and Sam that have had 2 games in 4 days there. So whether they are fully rested enough to be fully fit for Sunday is a different question. I think if you were to look at it in isolation, Tuesday to Sunday is enough. But having 2 games in 4 days and then only a 5-day gap,
and Mane,
maybe that
wasn't
makes it, and Mane as well.
Yeah.
I think
maybe
he showed
makes a
that.
difference.
Yeah.
He looks, for me, he just looks off the boil anyway,
Yeah,
to be honest with
yeah.
you, at the minute. And there is a worry there, certainly, at the very back of my mind, where you heard all the stats of Sadio Mane about him going missing during the winter months. And there's that, it's a niggling thing at the moment where I'm not ready to say, yeah, that's what it is, of course. We've got to get through winter, but it is worrying that the last 3 games he's pretty much been off the boil.
Like putting a crab in the fridge before you boil it, Have you ever heard that? Putting crabs and lobsters in the fridge, maybe the cold gets to him. Maybe he gets a bit chilly and he can't move like he does normally.
I genuinely got no idea what you're... I can honestly say I love a good analogy. Everyone knows this.
Do you not know, like when you go to boil a crab or something, they say stick it in the freezer beforehand.
We didn't have crab where I grew up.
Crab's not fancy. You can go down and pick some mud crab up, something like that. I'm gonna get so slated for this.
It's interesting. I love the way that you actually. I think you mentally went through the thing. I won't press on with the lobster. I'll go with the crab because it's more of a common man's.
That's right.
Seafood.
At home with chefs just whipping up some like crab souffle.
Honestly, crab sticks in pre-packaged crab sticks is about as crab.
Well, there'll be people from abroad who will know from the Med who cook it normally. And
anyway,
they're just
let's put it to the people at home. What is your experience with how many of you do you put your crabs?
Do you know what's worse?
In the fridge.
I was gonna use putting crickets in the fridge because I used to have like a lizard and used to put the things in it, and then I was like, nah, because if I say crickets in the fridge, I was like, if I talk about lizards and crickets in the fridge, I'll get slated. But if anyone's got a pet reptile at home, who knows about that?
Top tips.
It's a real niche market he's aiming for, isn't he?
I
And a second sight on Liverpool fans, he's got for lizard owning Liverpool fans as his fans.
That's a very specific Facebook ad targeting that, isn't it? Like,
I do
Liverpool
it for the trolls. It gives them something to get their teeth into.
Think of chilled like chilled crickets.
Well, there you go. That's back to Mane.
See, I was going to suggest that maybe it might be because the African Cup of Nations is coming up and it's important to him, and he might be having one eye on. There's a few players picked up injuries. I don't want them to be me, or maybe it's just that initial period.
It's a bit far-fetched.
It could be that initial period of. He's settled really well, Chris. To be fair, and all players have ups and downs in the season. It's only the genuinely top players who perform consistently throughout the year. So he's probably due a couple of games when he's not at his best.
And that's fair enough as well. And let's not forget there has been changes over the last couple of weeks as well. He might be missing Adam Lallana just as much as we are. And then Coutinho obviously getting injured, and then this week playing with Origi up top and different centre midfielders. It might be a load of different things. There hasn't been that consistency that there was there at the start of the season for him, where he was playing in the same side week in, week out, and how everyone knew how to play with him and stuff. There's been a few changes around him, so maybe that's affected him. What can't be excused is the fact he had the wrong fucking boots on the other night. That's just stupid.
He does. I kind of said I was watching the game at the weekend, so I was thinking he could do with stepping up here, and this is where we've been resistant to a lot of this so far, which means it's completely different from any other season where we just heap tons and tons of pressure on all of our signings. But that being said, he has had this period to adjust. He's had this period to settle. I don't think it's too much for us to expect him that, listen, if Coutinho's going to be injured and Lallana's going to be injured, that he is one of our main men. That he should step up and win games for us.
You even looked at the squad last night, and you're looking for somebody in there to replace Coutinho or to step up and provide that kind of like pace or that spark. And I think I'd heard people say at Southampton were like, he goes hot and cold, and he was so on fire when he came. You kind of couldn't imagine that was such his game.
We're ready in the John Barnes comparison.
Yeah. And he just because he was so electric in how he plays and like how intense he plays, you couldn't imagine him just going completely missing, because that was his whole game.
Yeah.
And then you look, there's been a few times where he's looked to make runs and then he's kind of held off a bit, and you've gone, the other, you can do that, you can run against players, that's what's different, you know what I mean?
I think his biggest issues have actually just been, his touch.
Yeah.
As much as anything else, like he's just looked, I don't think he's looked like knackered, I don't think he's looked lost in games as such. There's just too many times where the ball's come to him and he's overhit it, or he's underhit it, or he's just made the wrong decision. It doesn't feel, it's not flowing for him at the moment.
There was a few things last night where like he was getting it, and he was like, he had like all the space in the world to run in behind, and he was putting his foot on it and just stopping, and you could tell like almost it was getting to him, and he didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And then I think it was actually the goal for Origi, or it might be Burn, I forget which one it was, but where he back heels it, slides it through, and that came instinctive to him. He just did it, and it almost seems to be that I think, like I agree with Chris that because Lallana's off the team, Coutinho, I think maybe he's thinking he's got to step up a bit, and that's actually stifling him slightly because he seems to be overcomplicating it.
Maybe just when Lallana's there, Chris, he forces Mane to just be a cog, just to perform his functions, his basic functions. Run this way, run that way, do this, do that. Maybe it's a case of him overthinking it a little bit.
I think it possibly could be. You know, as John said there, that little back heel the other night to Divock Origi, which ended up in Woodburn's goal, was incredible. And you know, he's still managing to affect games even in bad form though, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we've had players a la Jordan Ibe last season, you know, when he was off the boil and he wasn't in the game at all. Last 15 minutes at the weekend against Sunderland, he was the catalyst for a win for us. You know, and last week he had a big part in that second goal as well. Still running at his man. It's one of those things, I think, where we're a bit spoiled nowadays with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. Flair players used to be like this. That's what wingers are. It's the toughest position to play because you're one-on-one with your man, and it's if you're beating them more than 50-50, you're doing well in a winger, and that's what you've got to forget. You mean, you can look at Messi and go, well, he rips them 99 times out of 100. Doesn't happen with every winger in the world. And you know, Sadio Mane last night tried to knock the ball around his man a couple of times and ran into him. That happens when someone positions themselves well. It's a very, very difficult position to play in, and to consistently beat someone over and over, because actually what happens is you end up getting double teamed and all that type of stuff. So maybe we are being a little bit harsh on Mane, but you know, I would expect a little bit more over the last few games.
I don't think it's harsh. I think. And I also don't think it's a massive cause for concern either. You know, I think it's only been, I'd have said a couple, and you said 3. You know, but even within those games, as you say, he's still doing stuff. He's not being so anonymous that you're like, what are you doing there? You think back to the Sunderland game, he was garbage for 75 minutes, but then the last 10-15, he really came to life.
Well, and, penalty as well.
You know, look lively again. So there's definitely something in that. One thing I want to ask, off the back of Tuesday, John, I'll come to you first on this. Do you think it gave us any clues as to what we could do in the absence of Phil Coutinho? Because I think we all automatically thought, oh well, Origi's going to start up front. But that being said, we saw Wijnaldum used more advanced, which is something we've not seen. We've hypothesised that that's where we all thought he was going to start the season, but he didn't. He started in his midfield role. We could potentially see that. Again, we saw Grujic come off the bench. I don't think he's going to start up front. But
he wasn't rested for the Premier League.
No, exactly. But we did see a couple of different things that we thought might happen, but we haven't seen prior to this, that make it seem that it might not be as cut and dry as Origi just starts every game up front for us now.
I think to be honest, I think for me, I was talking with Chris about it off air, but I think actually we might do a formation change. We might start going to up top. I know normally, like, I was listening to the radio on the way to the match last night, and they were saying we've lined up as a 4-4-2, and it was Mane and Origi up front. And then the more I watched the game, it kind of became like a 4-3-1-2. Like Wijnaldum was playing slightly behind him, a bit withdrawn, but more as a 10. And I think that's what you might see. You might see him kind of push forward, and then Mane kind of like just weaving in and out, and Origi up front is like a nominal striker. And I think that kind of makes the most of everything we've got. You're not really moving people around too much. You're still keeping the same midfield 3 in a sense.
So you're thinking Firmino and Origi to start as
a 2, yeah.
Where I was last night, because I was up in the main stand, and it's kind of like watching weird high def TV because you're like from that angle. The way we set up, I couldn't figure out completely. I could figure out the back 4 with Kevin Stewart dropping, because he dropped right back into it and they'd push forward, and I kind of saw that. But then the rest of it up top kind of got a little bit mixed quite a lot of the time, and we looked quite flat. You know, we'd go into like a bank of our 4 attackers on the edge of their box, just lined up. So I couldn't really work out exactly what the system was trying to be particularly. So that's the only thing. The only thing that sometimes I saw was that Mane didn't actually drift out wide. What he quite liked to do is come in behind Origi a lot of the time, and that's why he wasn't down the wing, pushing in, doing the crosses. And then we'd kind of get it all tangled in the box, wouldn't we, a lot of the time? I
guess a lot of what will happen will depend upon a fitness test for Lallana this week. But I think there is a case, Chris, that if Lallana's available, it makes this a little bit more easier. It depends on how important it is to maintain what we've been doing so far, because if Klopp's still dead set on Firmino being the main man, I think we have the options to persist with that, and seeing Wijnaldum play wider means that we actually could see Wijnaldum replace Coutinho. I don't think he's as good as he offers anything like what Coutinho does in that position, but it depends on which he thinks is more important, that left-sided role or the guy who's leading the line.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a starting 11 prediction.
As always.
Once again, like you get like one where you go, all right, it's nailed on here. We're gonna be laughing, and then one change and it screws everything up, doesn't it? But I wouldn't be surprised if Origi does get the nod, to be honest. Mainly because he scored 2 and 2.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a big deal when you want to score goals and stuff, and when you're unsure how your attack is going to get those goals. You know, Mane being a little bit off the boil, Wijnaldum replacing Coutinho, not scoring a lot of goals, scored one this season in the Premier League, hasn't he? And Firmino hasn't scored in a few games now, has he? Has it been 3-4 games since Firmino scored something like that? Whereas Origi's banging form and got 2 and 2. Yeah. It's an easy one for me. Get him on the field in some way, shape, or form.
And even that run down the right hand side, it you can see not necessarily that he has to play up top, because he showed you what Mane's been doing for us when we were talking about who's going to come in and provide that pace and strength. I know it's only one run in a 90-minute game, but he picks that ball up behind the halfway line and when we were flattest,
Leon Carragher did, that's what he did. He just twatted it around him and ran around him.
Just ran around him, and it was just kind of like, well, there you go, I can do that as well.
I wonder whether we learned any lessons from the away game last season, because we played our B team there and performed really well, and we had, I know we don't have any of these players available anymore, but we had Ojo, Ibe, and I think Benteke actually, or was it Sturridge, but we played with proper wingers in that. But I wonder whether there might be a case of, and it depends again, the confidence of Klopp and whether he thinks we can just go out and steamroll them. It's not outside the realms of possibility that you could be a bit cannier with this one and do a little bit more, play a bit more on the counter. You know what I mean? Like play, because you expect they're going to try and come onto us. Do you put your trust in this newfound solidity at the back and say, well, Origi, we're gonna sit back, we're gonna soak it up, and we're just gonna stick you and Mane.
Here's a question for you. If you wanted to do a counter attack, who do you think's the best striker for that? Because I can see that there's pros to both Origi and Firmino in holding the ball up. Who would you go with?
I would go with Origi simply because I think back to the Dortmund away performance and what he was able to do there. I just think he's got his all-round game fits, because he can play with his back to goal, he can hold it up, and I look at what we did at the end of the Sunderland game, just when the game opened up big time, and him and Mane pegging it towards goal could be a real thing. But that being said, you know, having that off the bench, because I don't know what we've got on the bench. If Origi, Firmino and Mane start, what are we looking at as the options? Do you think Firmino?
No, I've not really thought about it. I was thinking about it because for all those reasons that you said, Origi's a good option, but then if you're playing on the counter-attack and you want to get your midfield up, I was thinking maybe Firmino's a better option, because I think although Origi can hold the ball up, I think Firmino's happy to buy a few seconds for the team and a little bit better at that. So I don't know, it was just amusing one.
Something that I think about Origi that he offers us, which we don't normally find ourselves in this position, but when we are under a lot of pressure in defence and stuff, we found this more last season because our defence wasn't as solid. But what we could do sometimes, which isn't the Liverpool way, but we punt it up if we were in some pressure, and then Origi would just chest it down and he'd keep the ball there for a while. And I think if we were going to play on the counter at somewhere like Bournemouth, who do play good football, you're going to have moments where you're going to be under a little bit of pressure, and if you just want to just hit it upfield and you want someone to run onto it and hold it up, then Origi's going to do that for you.
Well, unfortunately, there are a few options of what we can do. A 4-4-2 diamond wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea, because you could still have the three of Firmino, Origi and Mane. Whether you could play whether Mane could do the job as the 10, we don't quite know just yet.
I think if I had to put money on the table now, I'd go exactly the same formation, exactly pretty much the same way we've been playing, and control the ball, dominate the game, and that's the way it is. You know, we've proved that the last 3 games were difficult to score against. We've proved we can still score.
So
if it ain't broke, don't
I know
fix
this
it.
is like, but something that was quite interesting is last night he brought Milner on in midfield.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was just because he's like he's just like, there you go, I know you can play it.
I think
I
that might have been a simple.
I don't want it.
He wants to come on against Leeds.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
We'll shut this game
so,
down.
But I
we do forget he's an option there, you know, and then
with
did Moreno really do enough?
No.
To say, you know, we know what you're getting from Moreno one way or the other. I don't know whether he necessarily needs to prove himself, but I wouldn't be like he absolutely has forced his way into this side or whatever.
But I was just thinking, I forgot that, you know, you kind of forget when Milner came on and you were like, oh, here he goes, and then he came into that midfield. Not that he had any time to do anything or show us that it properly works, but it'd be quite interesting if we have enough injuries, if you want to push Henderson up and maybe...
Well, that's I think it's actually more realistic than we think, isn't it? Because I think we've all kind of gotten used to the idea of Milner as a left back, and it's Klopp clearly is his first choice and things. But a couple of the interesting things we saw from Tuesday night was Emre Can. I know Kev Stewart went off injured, but Emre Can going back into the holding midfield role, which we've not seen really from him so far this season. Wijnaldum being used on the wing, all things that we know they can do, but we thought, Klopp's not having any of this. He's actually changed.
I think what was really interesting is that I think he gave a bit of time to both Can and Wijnaldum up at that top left-hand side. I think he was having a little look at them both and wondering what they can do. Have you got any thoughts on that? I could see you sort of dying to say something a minute ago.
No, it's just I was thinking about like the Milner thing. The only thing I was thinking is if you're going to play Origi, you know, Milner's one of the best crosses we've got, isn't he? You know what I mean? And he was like 7 goals, 14 assists he got. So if you're going to play him up top, then maybe he's an option. You're looking for a right wing replacement.
This for me is could be a really pivotal point for Liverpool, because Klopp has, there's a couple of things that we think we know about him right now, and it's things like not playing players out, not wanting to play players out of position, having an idea, and you know, not rotating a side, having as fixed a settled side as possible. But I'm picking a formation best suited to the players he's got available to him. Now, there comes a tipping point in a side when the players you have available are no longer perfectly suited to your first choice system, as it were. And I wonder whether this might be that week where he does go.
Why would you think that?
Well, because it's that thing of with no Lallana and no Coutinho, who are so pivotal to how we play, are the players that we have to replace them so good enough to allow us to replicate what we do?
So
you know what I mean?
Are you sort of suggesting then that Wijnaldum, Can and Henderson aren't good enough to play as a 3?
Not necessarily that. It's more that it's the...
You lose the flair, don't you?
Creativity.
Kind of like
you saw that. We were going through the motions last night, and they're all good passes. You know, Chan gives the ball away a bit too much still for me. Like there was a few times, but we were just going through the motions and we were kind of playing good football. But it's just like, what are we going to do with that?
Yeah, it's what is that magic alchemy that turns us from being a sound and good in possession to being really, really dangerous. And it's that. And I don't know that Firmino on the left, Origi through the middle, with the absence of a Lallana in midfield, at some point that's going to tip to the point where it's not clicking anymore, and that's where does it facilitate, as we say, a change to just something that suits a little bit better to what we've got. Do you say, actually, you know what, this isn't going to work? Well, it's okay, because we'll make Origi the main man, and we'll actually we'll play directly to his strengths a little bit more, something like that, rather than this, rather than an expectation of bringing players in and asking them to do a Lallana light, do a Coutinho light, do a Firmino light job.
I think something was interesting about last night though is the fact that Aharia got the nod ahead of Grujic, and I think that was because, not necessarily because he's the better player, but to his game he's the more creative Coutinho, whatever, light kind of version. He showed that he has that in his locker with a couple of things. He looked a bit nervous in terms of, I've seen him play in the under-23s, and there's times when he'll do step-overs, and instead of just like turning, because he did a lot of turning on the spot last night, he'd go, do you know what, I'm going to try and ping this into somebody. He didn't try that just in case he lost possession. But against Bournemouth, I know you said that last season we played a kind of lighter team. Don't know if you'd put him on the bench and look to you.
I think he'll definitely be on the bench.
But I don't know how much influence he'd have, but it depends what kind of faith Klopp's going to show in it.
But there's some really exciting, still some really exciting options for what we can do, which is.
Can I flip it slightly the other way? Is there anyone Bournemouth might put out would worry you? Because I mean they played really well against Arsenal. It's their ground. They've got obviously Wilshere. He's just, a good player, and they're like. Is there a case for a slightly more
I'm less
workman like team rather than like to stifle them playing, if you know what I mean? Like put like kind of people who are going to get round the pitch more than people who are going to be creative.
I don't know. I if they're going to bother us, I think they could bother us in a similar way to like Burnley did. In that, not that they play the same way as Burnley at all, but they've got pacey forwards who've got an eye for goal. They could shell shock us in that way. I don't know. I do tend to agree with Chris in that I think he'll go out there and trust the style of football works. What it boils down to though is it wouldn't surprise me if Origi didn't start, or if he actually started him wide or whatever. It wouldn't shock me to see Firmino start in his position and us move stuff around that way. But fair fucks to Chris for having to step up and do the prediction as always. Who do you think will be the key man for Liverpool in this game, Chris?
Divock Origi.
Yeah.
100%. I think he's going to get another goal, maybe 2 this time.
Wow. Go ahead, John.
I'm going to say Wijnaldum because I want to see him step up and contribute more to the attacking side of the game.
Yeah.
I would have gone Origi, but just for the fact of kind of bit of difference, I'd like to say Mane, just because this is the one, as we're saying, we're missing Coutinho and Lallana. He just goes, do you know what, back with more of the first team set up. Yeah. Maybe that'll help him like it did against Leeds. He looked like one of the senior players who was there, who's a first team, who was kind of like, I'm here, but not that he wasn't trying. I'm not saying he was lazy. Like really, it was just it wasn't him full on, was it? And I think that against a team that kind of opens up a bit, he could kind of do some damage. So Mane.
So, I've got a feeling that again, all of this could be blown out of the water by the news that Daniel Sturridge and Lallana are fit and available for this game. And in which case, I think we could absolutely batter them. If they're not, then this could be one of those games where it's decided by a free kick or a set piece or something. I wouldn't mind Wijnaldum or Henderson for me. Just providing that little spark. Henderson, it could potentially be set up for one of those. Henderson's quick balls over the top for an Origi or something like that. It could be for me, Jordan Henderson. Sam, score prediction?
2-1.
Okay. I'm going to go 3-1. I think we'll do alright, but I think they'll get a goal.
I am going to go 2-0 again. Fresh off the back of me. Correct guess.
Correct number guess. No, I'll back that. I'd be all over it. A 2-0. That would be very nice. A goal in either half. Put your feet up for the last 10 minutes of the game. That would be sensational. Yeah, and we will be here. We'll be here and live as well, and potentially with some graphics. No pressure. No pressure.
Yeah. Let's do the answers for the quiz.
Oh, absolutely. Or even the trivia.
Whatever.
Well, yeah, just before we do give you the trivia answers, some cool things coming up. The Reds Transfer Roundup, a new weekly show on the redmentv.com, looking at all Liverpool's transfer news, rumours, ins and outs, looking ahead to the January transfer window. Going to be discussing, amongst others, Van Dijk, who's being linked strongly with a move in January. There might be something on Pulisic as well. Potential bids for Adam Lallana, which is a bit weird, and a whole host of other stuff as well. Completely free for a month. If you want to go and sign up to that on the redmentv.com, go and do it now and fully enjoy that show. We will be here for that. So if you don't like Steve Hoare, and how can you not like Steve Hoare? There's basically if you follow him on Twitter. But we Chris will be there for that show, so do stay tuned for that. Trivia then. 4 players in the Premier League era to play for both sides. Throwing some names.
Jordan Ibe.
Yeah.
Brad Smith.
And then there's going to be someone who played when
Jamie
they were younger.
Is it since they've come into the Prem or just overall?
6 players in the Premier League to play for both sides.
I knew he'd forgotten that. Jamie Redknapp.
Adam Lallana.
Adam Lallana.
Yeah. Was Tony Warner one of them?
No, but it's a good show because he played for everyone.
David James?
Nope.
Was he Watford before us?
Just 2 currently in the Liverpool
was
squad.
it Klein?
No.
No, you Palace, wasn't it?
You've got one of them. One of them was Lallana.
Yeah. This is interesting, Tally.
3 seconds.
One.
He's injured currently.
Fucking hell. Danny Ings.
Danny Ings.
Oh, really?
And one more. As abstract as they come.
Okay.
Sold by,
goalkeeper.
sold by Roy Hodgson.
Christ almighty.
Swap deal, I think, for out under Roy Hodgson.
Swap dealed out. The only
think he
swap
was
deal
anyway.
one was like I know to
I think I've
Fulham.
just tried to block that whole part of my life out, to be honest.
Delaval, no.
Hodgson was our manager.
Delaval.
Della Valle.
Was it Delaval?
There you go.
That's
Bloody
a shot and a half, that means.
Yeah, indeed. So there you go. If you got them all them 6 right.
I'm free, please.
Yeah, congratulations. Give yourselves a big wank. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of the content. There'll be a Pro Evo prediction. There will be a Start 11 prediction as well. Enjoy those shows. Click the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And we'll see you live on Sunday for the watch along.